Welcome to Unlikely Intersections, the podcast where intent, impact, and inquiry inspire our conversations. I'm Dr. Philip Brown with my good friend Dr. Terry Jackson, and you're at the intersection. The fascinating thing about intersections is that we all go through many intersections daily. The way we navigate these determines the trajectory of our day and our life. Terry?
You know, Doc, we have a very, very special show today. We've decided to do a compilation of two successful African-American men in Wilmington, North Carolina. We know one is Bigg B and the other one is Corey Scott. And we decided to do this simply because we want to show what two men with vision and purpose can do in Wilmington, North Carolina.
We'll see you at the intersection. Big time guest, Dr. Jackson with us today, local hero. What do you think?
Yes, we do. This is going to be a great podcast today. We have no one other than Mr. Brandon Bigg B. Hickman, who is a local Wilmingtonian, an influencer in the area, and a great mentor in the area. So we are so great to have him today.
Thank y'all, man. I'm honored. I'm honored to be here. I like y'all, man. You know what I'm saying?
That's always good, right?
Two great mentees in here, man. You know, in my circle. So, I'm blessed to be here. Thank y'all.
But, just give us a little bit about your background, your journey, how you got to where you are today.
Man, I am originally from Wilmington, North Carolina. Y'all know they don't make a lot of us. And I grew up right here, maybe about 4 blocks away from this particular building. I grew up on the Northside. I went to New Hanover High School. I graduated. Band was my thing. I also grew up, 4 blocks that way, which would be Community Boys and Girls Club, 901 Nixon Street. So I just grew up in this area, and that's where that's where I love. And band propelled me to go to school. I was able to see bands like Port City Classic and all those things, but you had to go to school if you wanted to do that. Yeah. And so it propelled me into a scholarship to Norfolk State University. Went to Norfolk. I graduated from Norfolk State with a degree in minor in music media, major in business. And I then started teaching in Charleston, South Carolina. So I moved to Charleston, and I taught there for a while. Well, really, my very first big gig, I worked at Foot Action. So I worked in the mall in Charleston, at Citadel Mall, and then I started teaching in Charleston County, which was Baptist Hill High School out in the county, near Young's Island and Edisto and Ravenel. So I started teaching out there. And then I came home a little after my stepfather passed away. I moved back home and started teaching, and I got into radio. I've always been a person that wanted to be in the community and wanted to serve the community. So that's like a little short thing, but that's what brought me back home. And since then, we've been trucking.
Well, now you're representing right there on your sweatshirt. I know that's an important organization to you. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Better As Possible. Me and my wife started Better As Possible shortly after my mom passed away. My mom passed away in 2011, and I was depressed. I have to be very honest with you. I was Bigg B during the day, so I'm laughing and joking. Yeah. And then I get home, and I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't talk to her. I just watched TV. It was almost like I was vegging out. And so she said, why don't you start this fashion show? Why don't we do a fashion show with your mom? And I was like, nope, we're not about to do that. I don't have time, And so I think she put it in other muses. And so people were coming to me, hey, man, why don't you do a fashion show? And I was like, all right, let's try it. And so this is 11 years later. So... and so we called it Better As Possible because I felt like every day I had a teacher at New Hanover High School named Dr. Emerson. She wasn't even Dr. Emerson then. She was just Miss Emerson. And Dr. Diane Emerson would stop us in the hall and be like, if better is possible, good is not enough. So did you really do the best you really could on this paper? Did you really do the best you could in class today? Like, not even being her student at one time, like she would just stop us in the hall. And it was that was very impactful on me. And I used to say it all the time. So we said, let's go with this. And we actually added her to our board and all that good stuff. So that's how we started Better as Possible. And from there, the Lillian Higgins Scholarship, Port City Written Runway, the Lillian Higgins Scholarship, Grits, Girls Rocking in the South, Man Up program. So we're doing, trying to continue to do things in the community like I think it should be.
That's awesome, Bigg B, because, you and I are both members of probably the most prestigious fraternity in the world, and that's Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
Yes.
And those are that's a part of the charge of being a member, is to work in the community, to uplift of your fellow man. You just said something real interesting about if better is possible, good is not enough. And you told a story about Dr. Emerson, who I'm familiar with, and Dr. Brown is familiar with. But it reminded me of a story of Henry Kissinger. He had an assistant, and he asked him to write a paper. And as the assistant wrote the paper, he then submitted it to Henry Kissinger. And Henry Kissinger sent it back to him and said, "Is this the best you can do?" And the assistant got it back, took a look over it, went over it, made some modifications to the paper, sent it back. And Henry Kissinger sent it back and said, "Is this the best that you can do?" And the guy was kind of puzzled, and he said, "I need to have a meeting with you, Dr. Kissinger, so we can talk about this." And he went in to meet with Henry Kissinger, and he said, "Well, I'm not quite understanding what you want." He said, "I asked you if this best you can do because I didn't read the paper. I just wanted to go ahead and have you write it and submit it. So is this the best you can do?" So that speaks to doing the best that you can do every time, because you really don't know if the person you submitted to is reading it or not. But is this your best? Right. That's so correct. That's a good mantra to kind of have. Tell us a little bit about the recent work you've been doing, in the community, because I'm always interested in hearing about that.
I think right now what's on my plate is definitely helping. I sit on the board for the Southeastern Boys and Girls Club now. That was a major role where and I don't like saying merge, I like to say unify. How big is that to unify a club, two clubs that historically, and we have to be very transparent, historically, I'm not going to say didn't get along, but historically, we know why there were two clubs. And so I sit on that board right now, and I sit on one other in my neighborhood, in the neighborhood I grew up in, and that's the Northside Food Co-op. Very important. The only grocery store I knew was on the corner right here, Miss Ruth store. Miss Ruth would let you you could buy a slice of bread, Dr. Brown. You could buy a slice of hoop cheese. Like, you could buy the slice, not the whole bag. She would feed the neighborhood. So that's the only thing I knew as a grocery store. I know you go to Park at that time, Parker's, Hills, whatever we called it, Wilson's. We go to that grocery store, but you had to drive out. I'm talking about walk to the grocery store. That was the only grocery store I knew. So I sit on those two boards, and I think this is important to our community, that we have food on the side and healthy choices, and not just, and this no punch, I'm not gonna say the name of the store, but a store that is only $1. I mean, but I'm just saying, I think there's more healthy choices with us having a grocery store in our neighborhood.
Yes.
And it also is going to bring some opportunities to different folks, whether it's jobs, pharmacists, whatever it can be. We're going to have that in the neighborhood, and I'm excited about that. So those are some of the recent things. Of course, we still are Rip the Runway. We just had that last month, and we're getting ready to send out applications, scholarship applications, so kids can, I like to say young adults can go ahead and apply for the scholarship. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So those are the things I'm doing now.
How many scholarships have y'all given out now? I mean, it's got to be a bunch. 11 years, and
I think we are on 16. It's about $16,000. A little bit was more than $16,000. 16 scholarships though.
Wow.
Yeah. So some kids have received 500, some 2,000, 3,000, like that. So we've been excited to bless some I guess, incoming freshmen. Because I feel like if I can get you there and you have a little bit of extra, you know, with your financial aid, you'll stay longer at school. If you just don't have to worry about that first year, then you'll stay a little bit longer and hopefully graduate, period. Yeah.
You know, I know that music is a love of yours. You know, being the DJ on the radio. Here's a question I have that's, you know, we're not going to find any answers here.
Okay.
But I think it's great for dialogue, simply because, you know, when I grew up, I was a huge Parliament Funkadelic fan, right? And my mother and them listened to that music and said, you know, that's the devil's music and this and that, and what are they talking about, right? You know, it was the evolution of music, just like the Flower Children, and people looked at them and now we have, I'm going to say rap, not hip hop, because it's not really hip hop, it's rap. And we listen to the lyrics, and we play the lyrics on the radio, and the people listen, and there's behavior that's driven by some of those lyrics. How do you feel in the business you're in around playing that music, that style, but then having to get in the streets to do the work to help people understand that this is just entertainment. It's not reality. So you can listen to this, but this is not meant to be lived out. How do you deal with that? How do you reconcile that?
Oh, that is a great question, Brother Jackson. So the very first thing, like you said, you grew up listening to Parliament, right?
Right.
And so your parents like, man, get that out of here. So,
Right. That's right. That's right.
And before that, it was Puff the Magic Dragon.
That's right.
Nobody knew they were talking about smoking weed. I mean, we have to be very honest with ourselves, right?
That's right.
So I remember vividly my mom saying, I'm playing Planet Rock and some other things. And my grandma and my mom like, yo, get that beat bop, blip out of here.
That's right.
That's only going to be a fad.
Yeah.
And now it's 50 years later. You know what I'm saying? Hip hop is 50 years old this year. So I'm glad you acknowledged that. As rap music evolves, a lot of people say, well, it's mumble rap. It's not hip hop. It's not the culture. But it's what, if we look at rap and we look at hip hop culture, it's always been the youth that has been the driving force of this, right?
Right.
If this is what they like, then they're driving the bus. So we got to like, okay, I mean, that's cool. So there are some negative things that we do here. I am able to get on a programming call every Monday and say, I don't know about this one. I don't know about this one. I'm going to have to day part this one to nights. I'm going to have to day part this one to afternoons or whatever it may be. So we do have a choice in what we kind of pull. But, excuse me, there are some messages in there, you know, you're like, oh, man. Is this what they're seeing, though? Is this what the youth are seeing? Because people say when we were listening to hip-hop, it was the Black CNN. It was the very first time that Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five said, hey, this is where we live. People on the stairs pissing everywhere. And they seem like they just don't care. That's from the message. That's an actual lyric from the message.
That's right.
Don't push me because I'm close to the edge. So that was the first time you were able to see African-American youth and where they lived. Actually on the video, one of the first hip-hop videos. So is this what they're seeing? And the second thing is, are they lying? Because you just said, is it facade? And sometimes it is facade. These things are facade. I talked about the other day, I have an older nephew, and I'm gonna tell his business. And he had moved to Wilmington, and he was staying with us for a little bit. And he said, yeah, man, I'm from where the roaches be, blah, 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 I'm in the streets. And I was like, no, man, you from Somerville. So
That's right.
What are you talking about?
That's right.
He's like, oh, but it sounds like real hard. I said, no, you're from Somerville, South Carolina. Don't do that. So,
that's right.
But we had a good time, and we were able to, I guess, differentiate what was real and what was not. My work in the community means that I want you to have the best record, and this is on the independent side. When I talk to other musicians, other rappers in the industry, other singers, I want you to have the best music. I don't want you to depress or kind of compact who you are, but I want you to be real, but I want you to give a message, and I want it to be the best message and the best song and the best quality because you represent Wilmington. So that's where I go into that. When I go into the community, I do say this. Sometimes it is a facade, and there's a time and a place for everything that we have as far as music is concerned. And when we do that, when we're able to tell them that, when we tell artists that, when we tell youth that, then they kind of step back and say, okay, maybe this is not the time to say, I used to shoot people up. I like, nah, not really, not at 4:00 in the afternoon. Maybe we could do that a little later in the club scene. But why don't you make a record for radio?
Right.
And that's really large. Like, if you can make a record for radio, I tell them all the time, if a woman can sing to your song and she remembers it, you got a hit. That's what you got. So, yes, it is conflicting at times. It is conflicting at times. Even sometimes I like that song, or I'll hear a song, I'm like, oh my God, do we got to play this right now? Can I day part it? And what day party means is I only play it at a certain time in the evening. So,
Awesome.
Hopefully, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did.
Okay,
Good. That's always a tricky topic, It's whatever we,
But it's a good question. Yeah.
We immerse ourselves in whatever it is, and often move toward that. So that's a question that Terry and I have kind of touched on a couple other times. Is what does this actually mean? How do you make better as possible if you're fully immersed in something that sounds like it ain't very good?
Right.
Because it could be something that we like as well, right?
Yeah, it could be.
But being mindful that we are parents, right? And we have to. We might be, but we're trying to set a good example as well, right? And so I might have my headphones on when I'm listening to that, so that nobody else can hear it.
Yeah.
Because I like the song, I like the beat, but it's about those who come after us and how do we make life better for those who come after us, right? And make it more positive, and to understand that there might be some validity or some realness to it, right? But for the most part, it's entertainment.
It is, and you have to also ask your question, or ask my community members or guys that grew up in my neighborhood or around my neighborhood. What do you get out of it?
Right.
What are you getting out of it? Are you getting motivation out of it? Or are you getting the plan to do something else? Right. What are you getting out of it? If you're not getting any motivation out of it to do better, to be better, then, why are we here? Right.
Yeah, it kind of, music puts us in the empathy space a lot of times, right? And so, I think about a lot of the music that I'm attracted to and have been all my life. I haven't really lived much of that.
Right.
Not really. But I do see it as motivational, as aspirational sometimes.
That's right.
And frankly, to be avoided sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think there is definitely a message that adults can carry that's separate from the music, right? That life is not the music.
Right.
That's right.
That is totally right. That's totally right. Yeah. That's cool.
Because I've always been into the lyrics, right? And to be honest with you, even though I was a big Parliament Funkadelic fan, I'm listening for the story. I'm always, coming up, being born in the 60s and hearing all that Motown, the Marvin Gaye and the OJs and Stevie Wonder, it was about the message that they were delivering at the time from the late 60s and the 70s. And so, of course, it was a positive message, and it was a message about love.
Yeah, I was going to say, we was in love.
Yeah, it was about love, right?
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed the ballads, the slow songs, because of the stories more than I did, the dance, the dance.
Right.
But so with me, I'm in love with words. And when I hear the lyrics today, I have to ask my daughter, what are they talking about?
Right.
Because I don't understand. Please. And often it's a code, right?
Right.
I might think it means one thing, and when I ask somebody younger, no, this is what it really means. And I'm like, you throwing me off now, right?
And like I said before, hip hop is the youth were always the driving force of that.
Right.
And so it's always good to sit down with someone a little younger than you and be like, man, what are you talking about? What that mean?
That's right.
And they'll tell you. The kid's like, man, like my nephew, bro, his man, this means so and so. I like, oh, word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I said, you like that song? I don't know. I don't really like that song. And in my mind, I'm like, thank you, Lord. I said, okay.
Yeah.
But he's my litmus paper test.
Yes.
A lot of times when I'm
Yes.
talking to him about records, I say, you like this record? You like this record? And he's like, no, I like this. And we have to also, I know we talk about radio a lot, but YouTube is,
Ooh, yes.
I see them on YouTube all day. That's their radio now. Like almost, you know? And we might be, let me knock on wood. We not the dinosaur yet, but we might be the dinosaur. But it's they hit YouTube and just search. And there's certain songs that are like, got 40, 50 million views. I never heard of the song before.
That's right.
I'm like, good gracious. So that the digital aspect of this is way wide. You know, it's worldwide.
That's
basically.
right. That's right. That's right. You know, that's why I like talking to the youth.
Yes.
Because they keep me relevant,
Yes,
right? If
definitely.
I really want to find something out, go ask my daughter or go ask, nieces and nephews, what is this really? What's on your mind?
Right,
Really?
right.
You know, so because we have to, as long as we're on this earth, we have to remain relevant.
Correct.
And
correct.
in order to do so, it means the conversation. And what you said about the youth has always been the drivers. If we go back to the '60s with Dr. King, you know, he was very young.
Yes.
Malcolm was young. Medgar Evers were young. All of those movements that when you look at the Flower Children, all of those were young people,
Yes.
and so we have to be mindful of what we not only feed the body, but what we feed the mind.
Yes.
And that's the distinction of what's happening, quote unquote, in the streets today. What are the minds being fed?
Right.
Because when I ask a lot of youth, so tell me what you're reading, I don't get a whole lot of responses.
What's last book you read?
Yeah, I don't get a lot of
tough.
responses, right? But what are you listening to? Oh, man, they start giving me a whole library of music that they're listening to, much of what I haven't heard because it's underground.
Right. And I think that's important to say, just reading, period,
Yes.
is important. And so my push sometimes is more on a comic level to read a comic book, and maybe that'll spark the interest. Oh, by the way, have you read this? And that's how I kind of started with Ike. I was like, hey, here's some comic books. Here's a graphic novel. Here's this. Have you read this book right here? No. I was like, you should try it out. You should try it out during the summer. Turn the TV off. Let's see if we can get it.
You know, what's interesting that you said that.
Excuse me.
There's research that says that for children who grow up reading comic books, their ability to read is much greater than those who chose or who didn't get the opportunity to read comic books. So there's a lot of validity to what you're saying, whether you know it or not. Yes.
Yeah, I just, because it's a little bit more, it's something I might like. It's anime or it's, Marvel or something like that. I want to read this. I want to see what's in the story. And if I can get you a graphic novel, which is a little bit more expensive than just that one little flip page, it's like, it might be 6 or 7 volumes in there. They'll read through that, and he'll burn through that, or whoever I give it to, they'll burn through that. And I was like, we'll try this one, and so hopefully that helps. But I do think that reading is important because that's what I did. I mean, I had the little thing where you had to read 10 books a week at the library during the summertime, and I would walk down there, and I'm gonna tell the truth. I used to walk to the library where it's at right now, but I do remember when the library was on Market Street. I was little then. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It was on Market Street. And then where the library was Belk's.
That's right.
So y'all know what I'm saying.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And so I would be there, and the one reason I was there because my grandmama's house was hot, and they had great cool air in the library during the summer. So I would go there and stay there all day and read books and have a good time. But that's what I was. That's what I did. Inside the neighborhood I was in, and you could get away. You get away. I could go anywhere I wanted to go inside of that book during that time. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, it's interesting because this whole concept of getting young people to read, in a way, is like asking them to slow down in a world that's getting faster and faster with the availability of YouTube and all of that kind of stuff. And we know from brain science that those periods of downtime, that meditative time, if you will, but those times where things are slowed down are really important to further development, and so it's fascinating to me that reading remains relevant, right?
Yes.
And I personally read. I mean, I read a lot of times a book a day.
Man, okay.
I mean, but certainly several a week.
Right.
And often have multiple books going at the same time. And Terry and I share the sort of same passion.
Yeah.
And so, I knew from a very early age that reading opened the whole world to me, and everything I've basically been able to do or accomplish came really through the gateway of being a good reader.
That's
Right.
And that's our challenge when we talk about locally. We know we got some gaps because I want to make sure we touch a little bit on some local pieces, so we know we have some reading gaps in our schools that we got to figure out some solutions.
Right. I do feel what they have going on in certain classrooms in certain schools where they're asking community leaders to come in and read. So you see someone that you may know in the community that you have respect for, or you're being introduced to them for the first time. You might have heard, oh, I know who the mayor, I know the mayor. I've heard of the mayor, but I've never seen him. Or I've heard of this person, I've never seen them, but they come into your classroom and read is major. So shouts out to those people that are doing that in their classrooms, like Nathaniel Johnson at Virgo, and some folks over there at Snipes, Dr. Willis over there at Snipes. So you have folks that are coming in to read, which is important. But then we have to actually practice it. So now we got to get our students practicing reading. Let's take this 1 hour before. I remember when I was still teaching at Murray, there was a period before school started. So school would start, I guess we started 7:30 at one time, and from 7:30 to 8:30, you would have a window where you would read before school even, the regular classes started. School started, but before regular classes started, you would read. And what I would do, I think we read, in my class, one of my classes, we read this book called The Moves Make the Man. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of that, but it was about a young man here in Wilmington, and they played basketball at Chestnut Street Junior High School. And so the kids were able to see themselves inside of this book. Oh, this is from Wilmington, and this is what was happening. And they dealt with racial issues. And inside of the book, I would read a chapter, and then I would let them read the chapter. Then I would read the chapter, then let them read the chapter to themselves. So I think that's important. Those things, when you start practicing that, I think it helps a lot.
Yeah, I would agree. I never went to the public library as a child. My first library card from the public library, I was in college.
Oh, wow.
I did a lot of reading in school. I'll give you a quick little story. I remember being promoted to the fifth grade, right? And in the fifth grade, there were 3 reading groups, A, B, and C. Of course, A being the best, B. And so I'm a competitive young guy because I like sports.
Okay.
And so I land in the B. I land in the B group, and I'm looking at the A group. I'm like, why am I in there? Why am I in the B group? I should be in the A group. So I remember focusing, improving my skills. It was my competitiveness that drove me in sports that drove me to want to be in the A group because I wanted to be amongst the best, the first. So by midway of the year, I had ascended to
Oh, wow. That's cool.
the A group, right?
Yeah, that's big, yeah.
And so with that, just that, not ever having gone to the library as a child, right? There was something in me, Sports Illustrated. I love reading. Anything sports related. And so that drove my passion for reading. And then, of course, in school, you read the others because you're in the gifted and talented kind of. And, I was able to kind of use sports to propel for me the academic side of the whole competition. If I can compete with you on the field, I should be able to compete with you in the classroom. So that's what my driver was, right? And my mother said, well, hey, if you don't get good grades, you can't play sports. And that was just out of the realm of reality for me. I was going to play ball. Yeah, exactly. And so we have to be able to somehow find something to inspire the kids around what they love, whether it's sports, to get them to connect to academics, whether it's the music and the lyrics and being able to read and write, to be able to understand, and even if it's comedy, right? Because we know that comedians have to be well read to be able to put together their jokes. Right.
Absolutely.
You listen to Dave Chappelle and those guys.
It's current events.
Yes, it is.
You got to read the newspaper.
And so you got exactly.
Right.
So we have to find a way to inspire them, given whatever they like.
Right.
So there's the first half of Intro to Bigg B. We're going to hit you with Intro to Corey Scott. If you want to see the second half of Bigg B, go to our website, unlikelyintersection.com, or YouTube channel, and pick them up there. Here's Corey. You know, the interesting thing about intersections is that we all face many intersections daily, and the way we navigate these determines the trajectory of our day and our lives. Terry, pretty excited about today's episode. Local celebrity chef here.
Yes, very excited about that. You know, this young man has been a huge inspiration to a lot of people, younger and older, right? He's been the example of believing in self, and when you do, what can happen.
Well, tell us a little bit about Corey.
All right. Yeah, my name's Corey Scott, co-owner of On Time Catering, On Time Restaurant, On Time Food Truck. Got to make sure I put the co-owner in front of it because my wife would kill me.
We all know what that's like, right?
That's it.
Native of Wilmington, been here all my life. Only left for like a year and a half. That's when I went to Pembroke for college. And other than that, been here all my life.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, awesome, man. Awesome. So what is it about the culinary arts that's so attractive to you?
I think it's more the wow effect that I get from when people eat the food and stuff like that. We just had an event this past Saturday, and one lady was talking to me and asked me what culinary school I went to, and I was like, I didn't go to culinary school. the dish room at the hospital was my culinary school.
That's right.
But it's more the wow effect when somebody eating, just like let me know how good it is, and just the excitement from it.
Man, tell us a little bit about your life, your ascension from a child to where you are, because there are lots of young people out there who really need to hear, you know, who you are, where you came from, how your dream has got you to where you are today.
Right. So, like I said, native of Wilmington. We grew up in Gervais, the original bricks. Before they was tore down, me and my family, we moved to Garden Lake. And after Garden Lake, we moved to Westchester. We lived out there majority of our life in Westchester, off College Road. We stayed in the house. It was me, my mom, my grandma, and my brother and my sisters. A normal, typical black family, not really having much. Grandma, mother working to cover ends meet and stuff like that. From there, after that, I went to, like I said, I went to Pembroke. We went there. I went there for like a year and a half until I found out college wasn't for me. And they said it before I went in, like, college ain't for everybody. So it's different because high school, you got your mom or somebody yelling at you to tell you to get up, but in college, you don't. So it's funny because Cedric Harrison, Support the Port, is my roommate. He used to get me up. He's like, "Are you late for class?" And I'm like, "Man, I'll go another day." So I had like a partial scholarship there for football. I ended up losing that because of my GPA was like a 1.76, and it wasn't because of me not like knowing what to do in school, but it just I didn't go to class, and it was just like no. I think I messed up because I had signed up for too many early classes. I think I had a 6 a.m. class for early fitness walking, the weirdest class, just walking around the track all day long. And I even failed freshman seminar. That was actually the top failing class in college. Just because people didn't go. After that, I came out of college and when I got back home, my grandmother forced me. She was like, hey, you got to get a job. Like, you're 18 plus. This is a real life now. If you're not going to stay in college, you got to get a job. So I started off doing like a couple temporary jobs. And before that, like I mentioned, Ced was there. He helped me because Cedric was working there during the summertime. So I reached out to him to try to get a job at the hospital. So this was the time when like getting a job was like the hardest thing in the world, and getting in the hospital was by far the hardest thing in the world. So I actually used my grandmother's name for a reference because she was a CNA at both hospitals for 40 plus years. She retired from Cape Fear Hospital. So I used her. Then in the meantime, I was doing the temporary jobs, and I got a call that I had got the job. And I remember jumping off the loaded dock at this temporary job and going straight to the job. And I just quit. I didn't tell the people where I was going or anything. So I was out. So I started the dish room. I was 18 years old. A couple things I remember. I remember some of my friends that was like in the drug game that was making a lot of money. And I remember at the time the hospital had this pull-up door where the conveyor belt was at. That's when people dropped their food off after eating in the dish room. And I remember them pulling that up and yelling at me, ha, you got a job, you work at such and such, you back here washing dishes. And at that point I was like, man, like, do I want to do this, or do I want to go out there and do what they're doing? And you know what I'm saying? I don't have to. So it really, really, really shot me down after looking at that. And it's funny because those guys, the same guys that said that they're not here right now, they're incarcerated. So and I'm looking like, yo, I did make the right decision. So eventually, I worked in a dish room, I think for the first 5 years. So this is where the culinary part came in. I used to go into the kitchen and get the cook's trash and everything, make sure they straight, loading their dishes back up. And there was this one guy, he was in there like chopping up some onions or something like that. And I was like, can I try it? And he was like, yeah. So he was telling me how to guide the knife. Pull your fingers back, guide the knife when you're cutting. So I went in there, I tried it. So eventually I started doing it more and more. Can I help? Can I help? Can I help? So I was helping the cooks do things, but still getting paid dish room things. So it wasn't, at that time, it wasn't about the money. It was more about passion now. So I was creating a passion at the same time I was doing it. So as that was building up, they were short of cook that day. And then I told the chef, like, hey, I'll do it. So it was funny because that day it was fried chicken wings. And the same guy that was teaching me how to do the nice ski said, listen, I'll tell you something. Whatever you do, do not leave this corner. So I thought I was caught up. I left, man. Next thing you know, they're out of chicken wings in like 5 minutes. And then I didn't leave out of that corner for that whole day after that. So then eventually he started, the chef had like more positions open that I was picking up. So I was picking them up. And then then eventually, actually, a whole spot opened up. So I put in for that position. And me being young, calling out, not coming to work all the time, and the hospital was just head on with occasions and tardies and stuff like that. So when I put in for that position, it was 2 people. It was me and another guy. I didn't get the position because of my attendance. And I remember running into the bathroom and just like crying my heart out, like, God, like I did all of this stuff and I could have sworn I had this job, but I didn't. So right behind that, at the time, the director, he came in the bathroom behind me and talked to me and let me know, like, listen, this is the reason why. It wasn't your work ethic. This is the reason why you didn't get it, because of your tardies and stuff like that. But I promise you, if you come to work, come on time and do what you got to do, the next spot that open up, I'll give it to you. And then so eventually that's what happened. I ended up getting the spot that opened up. Then we, and mind you, when I got that spot, this is the first time I ever cooked anything. I mean, we cooked at home, maybe some tacos and some oodles and noodles or something like that. But it was never no cooking. Never no cooking. So we there, and the guy this is when the hospital opened the room service. This is when they first opened the room service. So I had the night shift. And I came in midday to help finish lunch, and I was working along a guy that's been cooking for like 20 plus years, and he was an awesome chef. So after working beside him, he was like, "Hey, I might leave." "Oh, you about to leave?" I said, "What? So what am I doing?" And he was like, "You're right here. You're taking my spot." And I'm like, "No." So he was like, "Pay attention. You see this fish that's on the grill?" Like, yeah. He said, "Listen, when you look at the fish is going to curl up on the edges. That's when you know it's time to flip it. If it's not curling, don't touch it." So I sat there, looked at it, and seen it curl up. Then I flipped it. When I flipped it, I was like, "Oh, it didn't stick to the grill." So then I had a little bit of confidence there. So eventually he left. I was there. I was on the line with the chef that hired me and everything, so it was kind of intimidating. But I did a good job. And from there, it was to a point like I had like crazy momentum, like sky's the limit type momentum. And I was like, yo, I came from the dish room. Like I didn't have a job, I said a couple of years ago, and I'm doing this now. So as I worked throughout the years, I worked my way up. Eventually, from the cook, I went to what is it called? We used to do this not expediting thing out in the cafeteria where you're cooking out in front of people. And it's a funny story how that came about, because one day I was walking out going to get something to drink, and it was a guy that was on that station. He had a pacemaker, and he had about 20 or 30 people in line. So I'm like, yo, you need some help? Me, get myself in trouble every time trying to help people. So I'm helping him, and as I'm helping him, he just leave. And I'm like, where you going at? So he left. I guess he was getting too worked up. Like I said, he had a pacemaker and everything. So he ended up leaving. When he left, the chef came out there with me again, the same chef. So next day he brought me in the office. He said, "Hey, I need you to do me a favor." So what's up? He said, "So I want you to work half of your days on the line and half of your days doing this." So come to find out, the days that he was putting me on was the hardest days, making pastas and stir fries and stuff like that. And the guy that was there, he was making salads and stuff like that. So that guy eventually ended up transferring out, and he went to another department. And then they kept me on that position 5 days a week. From there, I went to running a catering department. That was the last 3 years. And then I just remembered it was the last hurricane that we had at the hospital. And I looked my chef in the eye and I said, "This is my last one." This was September 2019. He laughed at me. "Hey, you're not going nowhere. Ha, 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 ha." I said, "Okay, I can show you better than I can tell you."
Right.
And then at that time, this is 2019, September 2019, right before that, me and my wife, we was doing like catering on the side. Like everybody else do catering out of the kitchen type thing. So we ended up saving a good amount of money. So we is in the process of buying a house. So we was like, okay, you know what? I got a choice. And this is me thinking to myself, I can buy a bigger house or I can expand my business. So what we did was I went to my wife. I said, "Hey, I got an idea." She was like, "Oh, no, not one of these." And I'm like, "Yo, just believe me. Just trust me, okay?" It's going to sound weird, but just trust me. So we took $25,000 cash out of some of the money that we saved up. And that money was supposed to like go to a bigger house. So we settled for a smaller house, 1,700 square feet house. And I took the $25,000 cash to go buy a food truck. And I remember going to the bank, going to get that money. And we had matter of fact, we had to wait, and they transported us to another bank so that bank could wire the money or something. It was just crazy. So we ended up getting that. And the guy that wanted it, he wanted cash. And I'm like, oh, like, I can't write you a check. So we ended up traveling all the way down to Ocean Alley to go get it. And I didn't want to ride with it by myself, so my mother rode with me, transport $25,000. And then we went into his bank, they counted it out, everything was good, and I got the food truck. So along that way, this was we got that in July. So we start now in 2019 from July to the end of the year was like the biggest. We had 4 big trauma, drastic crazy events that ever happened in our life. Like some of these events, if one thing happened to anybody, they wouldn't be able to recover from it. But we had 4. One I just told you was spend $25,000 cash on a food truck. 2 was October, we bought our first house. I mean, that's kind of tough now for people buying houses, so that's a big thing for us. 3 days later, after settling into the house, me and my wife on the back porch, just chilling, just relaxing, looking into the night. I remember looking at stars, and she told me to feel her breast. And she had a lump in her breast, and I was like, I don't know what that is. She said, yeah, it came about. So I started doing research instead of calling Dr. Brown, which I I started doing research, and then I pressed on it, and I said, did it hurt? Do it hurt when I pressed? She said, no. And then that was one of the signs of breast cancer. It was a lump that doesn't hurt. And I was like, ooh, okay. And I was trying to think of like other things to like persuade her like this is not it. So she ended up getting diagnosed with breast cancer. That was number 3. And then number 4 was December 3rd, 2019. I left the hospital after 13 years. So those 4 big events happened in 6 months. So from there, those 4 big events gave me the biggest faith in the world. I mean, capitalized FAITH, faith. Like, it was just crazy faith to the point, like, I know that I could do anything. I could jump off a building and hang glide without a hang glide. You know what I'm saying? That type of faith. From there, we bought the food truck. January of 2020 now? We went out with the food truck. So mind you, the food truck was supposed to be just a backup of me doing catering. So that was like, if I leave the hospital, then I got to have a backup just in case catering's not going right. So March hit, COVID hit. Oh yeah, all my caterings went away. So now where's my backup? And that was the food truck. So luckily we ended up buying the food truck, and that's what happened after that. We really built our name through the food truck, through COVID. So it was COVID was actually a blessing to us, but not a blessing to many other people. It was actually a blessing to us, which was like the weird way of looking at it. We created a crazy following off of it, setting up at Sam's Club for 10-hour days. We had nothing else to do. Nobody else had nothing else to do, nowhere else to eat. And we just pushed it. And then from there, it's just, we're here.
Man, what a fantastic story. It's got all the elements that, we talk about leadership. We talk about putting yourself out there. We talk about recognizing things. We talk about taking risks. We talk about all these things, and we just heard your perfect story that really has all those components, right? These leaps of faith, basically, that say, I'm not sure, there's no way to know for sure, but I believe. And man, that's just fantastic. I know we enjoyed the food truck a lot during the pandemic, personally, but parts of the story I didn't hear is there were parts of it all along where you were giving back a little bit in the community and doing things, and involved a little bit with NC Swim there, as far as just kind of, there was always that giving back component as you were following your purpose.
Yep.
And I think you're still doing a little bit of giving back from time to time, as I understand it. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you.
Yeah, we're doing it, just not as much as we were in the beginning. In the beginning, it was like more time that we had to do it. We fed the kids a couple times. That was during COVID when they was out of school, and they was eating all the school lunches. So we was hearing like a lot of complaints about school lunches and stuff like that. So it was like, hey, let's go out there. We just needed a spot to go do it at. And then my friend Julian Williams, he reached out to me and was like, y'all can set up here at the Boys Club. And then that's when we had like so many people like just donating. So we just had food, just a whole bunch of different things that we just giving away. We actually did that twice. We fed the homeless a couple times. And then now it's more of donating instead of like more physical work,
right?
Just because of the time, we try to donate where needs to be donated, not just hey, I'm doing this. Can you do this? No, we donate to like what really makes sense, type thing like that. Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed about you guys is you have really stayed deeply connected in the community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those roots have stayed right where they were planted in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, I think that's really important, obviously, to do that. Obviously, you do. I know Terry does. You know, and it's interesting to watch how it's almost become magnetic for you guys.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like there is just growth all the time.
Yep.
And you get to the place, it looks like, from your online presence and from the times I've been to restaurant and stuff, it's not like you got a lot of extra time. So actually,
This is extra time for him, right?
yeah, right. Giving away time gets harder. But then when when you have a little bit of financial resource to put forth, tell us a little bit about, the restaurant was also a leap of faith.
Right.
I mean, I know that you guys had an investment in the place, but you also had, the whole renovation process, and there's obviously you got to get access to capital. What did that process look like for you?
Before I even start off that, like, I do a lot of like Facebook posting, and it's all like positive Facebook posting, and I it's easier to explain it now than instead of me putting up a post up. I post it's not to say that, hey, I'm this and I'm that and I'm all this and I'm that. I'm probably one of the most humblest person like around here. It's to a point that like one girl told me one time, hey, you're too humble. Being too humble probably could get you in trouble. And then she explained it to me. It's a long story, but she explained it to me and I understood it. When growth, you grow too at the same time. So while I'm growing, I still act like I'm that dish room Corey. You know what I'm saying? But you still got to try to catch up with your growth. But I say this is because the way I post is always positive things that happens to us. Like I just explained that story. And that's the reason why I do post like, we won this, because I know where we came from. Like, for me to sit there and watch my wife go through chemo and stuff like that, head shaved. I got a picture in my phone, her sitting next to my daughter. And, when you're doing chemo, it's just like it's killing you. And I watched that picture, and I remember looking at her when I taken that picture, like, wow, like, at least she has a chance to fight. You know what I'm saying? But most people don't. They can get in a car wreck and they don't have a chance to fight. They can die instantly. She have a chance to fight, and that's how I look at life now. Like, keep going. You got a chance to fight. So, and I just wanted to put that out there. That's the reason why we post so much positive things, so other people could see it too. It's not like a bragging thing. It's just letting know, like, listen, I'm a black entrepreneur giving other black people hope. Like, that's all it is. But as far as the restaurant, so how that came about too, I used to have this guy and a couple other guys that came with him used to come to the food truck all the time. They came, always came. And not knowing that this guy was going to be like the savior later on, it was to a point that like we knew that we needed to eventually expand from the food truck because everybody was missing the food truck. So I reached out to a couple people. I forgot the lady's name. She used to work at a hospital. I reached out to her, and now she works for Live Oak. To come to find out, she's actually Garrett Huntley's Huntley Garrett assistant. Huntley is the president of Live Oak. So we ended up getting contacted with him. I had a meeting with him to discuss future plans. So I knew, me being a chef, I didn't know anything really about banking. So my friend Jamar Jenkins, he's a banker. I took him with me to the meeting to help me out. So while I'm in there, I'm actually telling these people what we're doing. Hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. We're feeding these people such. But bankers didn't want to hear that. Bankers want to hear 3, 4, 6, 9. They want to hear numbers. So I remember Jamar stopping me, was like, and he tapped me, and he was like, let me take over. And then he started taking over, and he started explaining numbers to him. And then now they was like, oh, okay. So eventually, when we left that meeting, Jamar got a call back. And I'm like, he told me, he was like, I got a call back. They want me for an interview. And I'm like, huh? So I'm thinking in my head, like, why they ain't call me? Like, that was my interview. You came in there with me. So like, yeah. So like, my natural, I don't want to say it like the hating part, natural part came in. Not like saying that I was hating on him, but like a natural, like it's natural. Like, why didn't I get it type thing? Like, that ain't right. So eventually he ended up getting a job down at Channel, and they needed somebody to hire for that position. So he got a job and everything. I'm like, yo, these people ain't called me back yet. So they eventually called me back to go set the food truck out there and serve them. And I'm thinking in my head, well, I guess that's their way of like saying, hey, sorry we didn't call you back. You come out here and make some money type thing. So eventually that ended up to another conversation, another meeting, because the first meeting I didn't have all my credentials right. And mind you, that having an accountant and everything else in line is very important. So my accountant had everything that I needed when I went back to the next meeting. Now mind you, go back to the beginning of the story when I said it was a guy that always came to the food truck. So I ended up, they ended up connecting me back with the guy. And I'm like, hey, what's up? His name's Joe. I said, man, you the one that comes to the food truck? He's like, yeah. And then kind of found out Joe was my underwriter. So this whole time he was coming to the food truck, he was the underwriter for the bank. So that's who I sat down with. Joe sat down in my kitchen with me and my wife. We did all the paperwork to underwrite to get the building and everything because we knew somebody else was already on top of it, and I let them know that. And then that we sat in there. I think we stayed up like 10, 11 o'clock just getting everything situated. The next morning we was under contract to buy the building and the land. Yeah. So eventually everything got right. We went for one number that we thought was going to cover everything, but being that I was trying to be the nice guy, save a historic black building, it ended up being like almost double what we asked for. So it was a lot of different things that we had to like go through during the pandemic. It was just a ton of things. I think the biggest thing that we had to go through was electrical box that we was waiting on. So the building was done. 6 months. 6 months just sitting there, the building was done. So that electrical box was like way out. It was supposed to be actually here like this past March. So it was supposed to open up like March, we're giving another tape about April, this month. So one day I put it on Facebook. I said something like, this is not right. Why is God punishing me? And then people started commenting, and then this one guy was like, yeah, I know how you feel, man. We're going through it now with our electrical business. And he said electrical business. And that then there I inboxed this guy. And I was like, yeah, this is what happened to me, such and such, such and such. And he was like, wait a minute, I know a guy that might have that piece that you need. Now, this piece right here, we done called everywhere. California, Oregon, any place you can name this in the United States, they don't have it. Everything's on back order. This guy had one. This guy lived, we're talking, he told me where you live at, and I was like, wait a minute, off such and such road in Leland? And he was like, yeah, we live in the same neighborhood. Then his son plays with my kids every day, not knowing that this guy had the piece that I needed. So we ended up buying it from him, and then boom, we got in.
So that's introduction to Corey Scott. If you want to see the rest of Corey's episode, check us out at unlikelyintersection.com or pick us up at our YouTube channel, Unlikely Intersections, as well as on Facebook. As usual, we're really grateful for your attention today. If you'd like to see any of our episodes, they can all be found at unlikelyintersection.com or on our YouTube channel, Unlikely Intersections. If you want to find me, you can find me at docphilipbrown.com or on LinkedIn at Doc Philip Brown. And Terry, where can we find you?
You can find me, Terry Jackson, PhD, at LinkedIn. And I'd like to say, these two gentlemen are inspirations. If you ever want to get inspired, take a look at their stories. Get in contact with them. They'll be more than willing to have a conversation with you about why and how they do what they do.
We'll see you at the next intersection.